Hi, everyone. Welcome to our second Creative Sustainability session. I'm Christina Rhea, the Head of Education at Seed&Spark. If you're not familiar with Seed&Spark, we are built to connect people through stories that matter. We are the #1 crowdfunding platform for creators of all kinds. We offer a variety of distribution options, and a big part of my job is to organize our annual education tour that's usually in person but has now moved online. And we're lucky today to have Erika Alexander and Tony Puryear with us to offer a really excellent workshop on creating comics. And so I'm actually gonna hop off and watch with all of you, but before I do that, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Shutterstock, WeTransfer, and Gumroad for making these sessions possible. If you didn't sign up through Eventbrite, please do that so that you can get updates from them, including really cool offers and what we're doing next. Enjoy.
Hey, hello.
Hi. This is going to be fun.
This is going to be fun.
Everybody, Seed&Sparkers and the creators and comic book writers. So we're going to talk about comics, right? Drawing them.
We're going to talk about the draw of comics. We're also supposed to say hello to everybody who's going to watch this later, not live, but by tuning in after the fact. So hello, and welcome to our session here with Seed&Spark and the draw of comics.
Yeah. So I guess we can introduce ourselves a little bit.
Please.
I'm Erika Alexander, and I'm a actress, writer, producer. I've co-founded a company called Color Farm Media. We call ourselves the Motown of film, television, and tech. And we're trying to build a bridge from the mainstream to the street because we believe that creators of tomorrow are out there and that the minority majority needs to be supported, educated, and ready for the future. And I am one of the co-creators of Concrete Park, along with Tony Puryear, who will introduce himself right now.
Okay, hi, I'm Tony. I'm coming to you today from LA, but I'm from New York City. I'm a screenwriter. I've been a screenwriter out here in Los Angeles for 30 years, and I draw a little, I paint a little, and we'll take you through how we came to create our graphic novel and why we, as two storytellers, Erika and I had, we have a lot of experience trying to sell stories to television, to film. Erika's currently working on a top secret podcast that's going to blow the world up. So we're storytellers first and foremost. But our comic book that we're here to talk about today, our graphic novel, is called Concrete Park. And we'll take you through a little presentation about how we came to make it, why, what's important to us about it. And then we're going to talk about, we'll take questions and talk about advice, etc., for other creators who might think they want to do their work in the comic book or graphic novel space. How's that sound?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. 1 second, I'll share our screen and we'll...
Do you hear a little rattling, Tony?
No.
Talk. Okay.
Okay, 1 second. I'm trying to share the screen. Here we go.
So we should also tell them that we'll tell them a little bit of the story of
I don't know if you can see me, what I'm doing here. Can you see the screen?
Yeah, looks good. It's up there.
Okay, very good. Again, the title of, and presumably, Erika, you and I are in little boxes on the side?
Yes.
Okay, I can't see that from where I am. All right.
We're good.
All righty. Again, our book is called Concrete Park, and the name of this presentation is The Future is Free, and we'll tell about why we say that, but that's like the motto of our graphic novel, The Future is Free. Again, to reintroduce Erika, most people know her as an actress, And they
I'm
know.
single. If you're wondering, Cosby Show. I'm on Wu-Tang. Being ready to do something with Quibi called the remake of Swimming with Sharks, and also Run the World with my old creator Yvette Lee Bowser, who's doing that on Stars. So just a little, tidying up with that. I'm an actress, and I write Concrete Park.
Big time actress. I'm from New York City, where there are a lot of concrete parks. The name is sort of like an oxymoron, like jumbo shrimp. But where I'm from, it's a very common phenomenon that many of the parks are made of concrete. We're storytellers, and that's how we identify ourselves. Whatever medium we're in, we could be sitting around a campfire, but we think of ourselves as storytellers. We got a big story to tell. We believe that our story matters, that our story is huge, that it contains multitudes. And so Concrete Park we think of as a very huge, big story. We wanted to tell a story about the future, a story with people of color. This is important. This is our orientation. Naturally, we've seen a lot of futures, things set in the future in movies where there's no people of color at all. And we were always like, what happened? And finally, we got sick of asking that question. We decided to make something of our own to address that. And this is the impetus. This was the start of Concrete Park. We wanted to tell a story about the future with people of color. We have a strong belief that our stories have the ability to change the world and shape the future. Too often, storytellers like us are told, oh, this is just entertainment, or you're just there to amuse us, so stay in your lane. We don't hold with that. We believe our stories can change the world and shape the future. And we always say, never underestimate the power of a well-told story. You look at Barack Obama, who by writing a book started to write his way into history. He wasn't content just to sit on the sidelines and comment about it in a book. He actually made himself a world historical figure who made history. But it started with the power of his writing. So why did we do a graphic novel? What's the idea? Well, how did we start there? We have a little origin story that we did in comic book form, the secret origin of Concrete Park. We were pitching a science fiction film to a Hollywood studio. The film also was a film about people of color in the future. And he said, stop. I'm going to do you a big favor, he said. You're wasting your time. Black people don't like science fiction. It's because, he said, they don't see themselves in the future. Now picture this. This is Erika Alexander, who got an NAACP award for sending Denzel Washington back in time in the thriller Deja Vu. This is me. I'm the first African-American screenwriter to write a $100 million summer blockbuster. I wrote Eraser for Arnold Schwarzenegger with the rail guns and everything. We're science fiction geeks. We see ourselves in the future. And what the man said wasn't just racist, man. It was double racist. First of all, for him to tell us that he knew better than we did what we like and didn't like, Black science fiction geeks like us. But secondly, I think his assumption was that we were just pitching him a little film that was only to go in the cultural ghetto for Black audiences only. And no. And Erika said, our story is beautiful. We need to get it out there. But how? Because this was not the first kind of racist pushback we had gotten in the film business. Suddenly there was a voice from the future. And Uhura appeared to us and she said, later for that fool, tell your own story. Make something you can own, like a graphic novel. She said, remember, the past is painful. The present's precarious, but the future is free. The future is free. And even Uhura's name means freedom. So we took these words to heart. But why? Why a graphic novel when we had sort of run up against a lot of resistance in the film world? Well, the barriers to entry are low. We came to find out it cost us next to nothing to write and draw our own story. Just needed paper and pencil and a lot of sweat equity and hard work. But the barriers to entry are low. It's low cost to do. You can do it yourself. You don't have to get a crew of 200 and make a Spider-Man movie. You can literally do it yourself. And we did. And we'll talk about that in a minute. We literally made a book ourselves. The aesthetic of independent comics and graphic novels is not slick. You don't have to be You don't have to be Marvel Comics. You don't have to be Marvel Studios making a Spider-Man movie. You can make something that's gritty and down to earth and
sweat equity. You can just make it up on a notebook if you like.
Right. That's right. It doesn't have to look slick. You just have to tell a good story. And you can publish with small independent publishers, or you can self-publish. And we'll talk about those two options later on too. We had some influences that we want to show you before we tell you more about our story. One big influence was a film from 2003, City of God. This very sexy, hot, violent, dangerous film from the favelas of Brazil. We were very inspired by the look, by the heat of City of God. We were inspired by the song, this old song by Benny King. This is before a lot of people were born, but it was a song called Spanish Harlem. And Benny King said, "There's a rose in Spanish Harlem. It's growing up through the street, right up through the concrete, but soft and sweet and dreaming." We were really inspired by that as well. The idea that in a tough city, like I'm from New York, still something beautiful can grow. I have a question here at the bottom. Anybody know where the world's biggest prison is? Here's another influence on us. The world's biggest prison is right smack in New York City, right in New York Harbor. It's Rikers Island. And it's the biggest penal colony ever built on Earth, bigger than anything the Soviet Union had or apartheid South Africa. Over the next 10 years, they're going to be closing Rikers down. But right now, it's the world's biggest prison. And I grew up literally right across the harbor from it. You can see Rikers Island out my back windows. And so we wanted to do a story about incarceration and prison, and Rikers Island was a big influence on us. Now, Erika's a world traveler. She's gone around the world touring with different shows and also with the Clinton Foundation. And she saw big cities like Cairo and Nairobi, Mexico City. These cities were big influences on us too. We wanted to talk about the pressure cooker of city life. Books we love. These are some obvious ones, but they really influenced us a lot. Beloved by Toni Morrison, a kind of magical realism where ghosts are walking around right now, side by side with us. Kindred, and the other books by Octavia Butler. Octavia Butler, if you don't know her, just a mind-blowing Black sci-fi author. And
visualist and creator of worlds. She was outrageously powerful and courageous with how she imagined her world.
That's right. And another good example of a writer who didn't let either gender or her race stop her in the slightest. They're like, a Black woman sci-fi writer? What is that? And she's like, I'll show you. And boom, she did it. She did the thing and opened doors for all of us. Gabriel Garcia Marquez, obviously a great example of magical realism. There's a lot of magical realism in our book. And we love the cyclical return of even dead characters and old themes in Gabriel Garcia Marquez, that the past isn't over. It's not even the past. It's right here with us now. Obviously, George R.R. Martin's books, Game of Thrones, influence anybody who's working today in the fantasy or science fiction space, and we are. And his books and his world building just blow us away. We were raised on Marvel Comics, the Fantastic Four, Thor, the work of Jack Kirby. Just flimsy little comics with big science fiction ideas in them. And Charles Dickens. If you want to learn how to write a story that makes people turn the pages, read Charles Dickens. Read his incredible gift for creating characters that you can't forget, and suspense. What happens next to Oliver Twist? What happens to David Copperfield? So a big influence was Charles Dickens. Here's another one, Frantz Fanon. This was a revolutionary Black Algerian French-speaking psychiatrist, a psychiatrist from French-occupied Algeria. And he wrote this book, The Wretched of the Earth. And since our book deals with themes of poor people, incarcerated people, people in cities, it was Frantz Fanon who came up with the idea of cognitive dissonance. The idea that when you believe something really strongly, but then facts come in to challenge that belief, you almost can't shake your belief. You've invested too much in it, and you have cognitive dissonance. This is the man who invented that concept, and he's a touchstone for a lot of progressive and revolutionary fiction. I recommend this book highly, The Wretched of the Earth.
And also, you were mentioning you had Thor, and you had also Jack Kirby and those things. as well. Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, huge.
Yeah. Huge influences, and we'll get to them in a moment too. Here's an influence, Jaime Hernndez. This is a guy working out of California, working out of Los Angeles here, from Oxnard, like the armpit of the universe, Oxnard, but the best pure drawer, just as an artist working today. He's been doing Love and Rockets comics for 30 years, and his comics are revolutionary in the way they show everyday life, everyday people. In his case, the lives of Chicano young people living here in the fringes of LA. I recommend him highly. If you can find anything by Jaime Hernndez, you get a great story and great art. Here's Jack Kirby. His work is all about abstraction. He wasn't there on the page to draw photographs, to make things that were photorealistic. He was there to go pow, pow. His work is so abstract, it's like Picasso. And yet it's so full of the power of what the drawn image can do. The image is as powerful or more powerful than movie images. This doesn't even have color to it, and you can see the power of a Jack Kirby drawing. Also, Gauguin was a big influence just on me as an artist. I love the way his stuff was both three-dimensional and flat, that literally the characters come up against the picture plane. And so does the background. Background's flat. He was influenced by Japanese printmaking, and that influence comes through in Concrete Park. Here's a panel I just friggin' stole from Gauguin. I just traced it because it was so great and such a great way to show two characters in the same frame. Also, Gauguin colors like a comic book artist, which I love. So what about Concrete Park? Let's talk about that. We have a multi-ethnic, multi-species, multilingual, multi-ability cast of characters. We have, that was nice, whatever that was.
That was me taking a picture of that.
Okay. I'll send it to you, Erika. You know, you just asked.
No.
I got you. So anyway, these are some of our characters. We tried to show different ethnicities, different species. As you can see, the green guy over there. And on the opposite side, on the left of your screen, is one of our ghostly characters. There's characters in wheelchairs. There's the little girl in the center is also a ghost. The big guy in the back, the big pale light blue guy, is also an immortal ghostly figure. But there's very warm, sexy, living characters as well, human and non-human. Our story takes place in a city that we called Scare City, because everything's so scary and everything's so scarce. And so this is Scare City. It's on another planet. And Scare City is carved up into different districts, much like LA. When we first got to LA, LA was popping. LA was a city of gangs. And if you went across certain territory lines, and if you said "cuz" to somebody, you would either get shot at or not. They'd embrace you. You know, there were Bloods and Crips in different colors. So Scare City is a city like that on steroids, full of different gangs and different gang factions. And we just made a map because maps are cool, and maps help you understand the story you're seeing. And whether you're George R.R. Martin with Game of Thrones or J.R.R. Tolkien with The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, maps are good. And they, I think, sci-fi and fantasy almost demands a map.
If you look on that map, you can see different, neighborhoods, and obviously we're influenced by places that we've lived and or people, things that have inspired us. And so you see Las Cruces. One of my brothers was born in Las Cruces, New Mexico. We even have a Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in our future town, because we think everybody in every place should have a Martin Luther King Boulevard.
That's true. That's true. This is what Scare City looks like. It's on a planet called Oasis. It's a planet with 2 suns. It's hot. There's 9 days a week, including 2 Saturday nights. And it's a very brutal, unforgiving environment. And it resembles some of those sprawling megacities that Erika had visited, like Cairo, like Mexico City. The book we ended up making was a colorful book, I think. Our characters come to this planet and work in these ice mines. You can see these blue panels here is this character reminiscing about her time in the ice mines. And when she got out of the ice mines, it was like out of the frying pan into the fire. She's now in this city of gangs, this hot, unforgiving city where the rule of this town is be down or lay down. Either join a gang or be their victim. Concrete Park looks like this too. It was this planet, this hot, unforgiving desert planet, was once green and lush and beautiful and covered by oceans and forests. And here's our lead character, Isaac, and his little ghostly spirit guide, the ghost of his dead little sister. They're seeing the oceans of Oasis the way they once were. This is a hallucination. We started making characters. We loved coming up with fun names, like trying to be like Dickens, coming up with characters. This guy's a tycoon in his own world. He's a big boss, but look at him. He's a mess. He's a parts person. This is a guy named Uribe El Tycoon, and he's sort of the boss of these parts people. They're scavengers on this planet, and you can see from his face, he himself has been stitched together from several different people. He's a man of parts. To help us visualize our characters, we made 3D models because we knew how to do that. We knew how to make 3D models. So we started making models that we could draw from and trace from, literally, because we had to learn how to draw this comic. So we made 3D models. This guy is a sort of phantom assassin named Vida Muerte, Life and Death. And you can see his divided character in his face. There's a lot of divided characters and twins and doubles, like there's two suns on this planet. In this case, here's a living woman on the left. Her name is JD. She's a notorious thief. And if you've seen her, you're one of the lucky ones because she's like Robin Hood. She's a ghost. Next to her is a character named Talladega, who's a character from the movies and TV shows that people on this planet watch. And she's the big star of all their fantasies. And she's based on JD and her exploits. Naturally, just like here on Earth, JD has undergone something of a lightning process to become a TV star. And here she's, on TV, she's represented by a sort of white digital avatar. This is what our book looks like. These are the covers of our floppy $3 comic books that were released by Dark Horse. We tried to have colorful, impactful covers, but also foregrounding the idea that our characters were people of color, even if they were green.
Somebody asked, what did you do to create the 3D models?
We used cheap off-the-shelf software. There's a software we use called Poser, which I think they still give away free or for near free. And it's a very simple software to learn. If I could learn it, I think anybody could. And you can take their basic models. This was just a basic male model. And I learned how to mess with the skins such that I could paint a little lucha libre type of mask on his face. But these clothes are off-the-shelf clothes, and that gun he's wearing in his holster is an off-the-shelf gun and holster. I think I paid $15 for that. So overall, maybe 20, 30 bucks went into making this model. And in using off-the-shelf parts like jeans and guns and holsters and shirts, I was able to make a distinctive-looking character and customize it. So again, the software is called Poser, P-O-S-E-R, and you can get it online. Now, I've been talking about this like we just up one day and, one day we just up and made a graphic novel, but it's not like that. We had to learn a lot of different skills, and we were game. We were very willing. As I said, we've been frustrated in our attempts to sell this as a movie. I read a lot of books. Erika read a lot of things online about how do you make a comic book? What do you do? As a screenwriter, I was lucky. I'd gotten to work with Stan Lee, the co-creator of the Marvel Universe. And Stan Lee gave me this little timeline. He said, a lot of my comic book stories, Tony, are just this simple timeline. Spider-Man, Daredevil, Captain America, whatever it is, this is how you get into it. He said, give me a hook. Spider-Man wakes up one day in New York City, the sky has turned red. What's the mystery? Spider-Man has to solve it. The hook leads to a mystery. And Stan Lee liked to begin a story in action. So it's not just that the sky turned red, it's that, aliens from space have taken over and they have to fight with Spider-Man. It leads Spider-Man to a mystery. And there should be a bigger action. And then as a result of the action, the mystery gets deeper. And this is like a 22-page comic. The mystery gets deeper and there's a big twist and it leads you to the biggest action of all, where Spider-Man realizes that it's not aliens at all. It's actually Dr. Doom pretending to be aliens. And they have a big action set piece at the end. Spider-Man and Dr. Doom fight it out. But it ends on a cliffhanger. Will Spider-Man survive?
Wouldn't you agree, Tony, that this same kind of template could be used on a podcast as well? Because especially if there was one that had to be told sequentially.
Yes.
Yeah. So this could be applicable other places in terms of storytelling. And that's important.
Stan Lee, he recently died, but he was an old dude. He was a Depression baby from New York City. He grew up in the age of radio. And Erika, you're exactly right. This could be a radio play or a podcast. Our modern equivalent would be a podcast. You start with a hook, jump into the action. What's going on? Then there's a mystery. Boom, 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 leading to the cliffhanger that makes you come back next week or makes you buy the next Spider-Man comic. So we were lucky to have this little piece of advice, and it worked. We made our episodes pretty much to this formula. And it gave our stories, we thought, a good rhythm.
And again, we want to say hello and thank you to all the people who've joined and are asking questions. Please feel free to ask a question. I see Marcus and like Anita, just chime on in and we'll try to get to it as we go. Okay.
Very good. Now, how do you go about laying out a comic book page, or how do you go about figuring out, you've got that little rhythm of your story, the hook and the mystery and the action and all that stuff. What do you do? And comic book stories start with thumbnails, little tiny sketches. You might do them on a piece of paper, on a just piece of copier paper. And it can be as simple as, you can see my little word balloons I've indicated there. There she is. Bang, bang, bang. The guns come out. Uh-oh, boom. And you start pacing out what you'd like to see on your page. You're allowed to be wrong. We had to kiss a lot of frogs, as it were. There were a lot of pages that didn't work. But when you're drawing them as thumbnails, you're just sketching. And this is how I started out drawing too. I couldn't draw comics to save my life, but it's okay. If you make a mistake, you just make another one. You don't have to, you're not trying to draw pretty here. You're trying to pace your story out with sticks and stick figures.
Yep.
Go ahead, Erika, please.
Eric Best has asked that well, the way you put it, Eric, that must all or most comic book characters be extremely robust, voluptuous, or muscular? No one should be normal, but always supersized in all parts. And that's not true. You can do your character as with the way you see the world. Obviously, in these very sort of hyper visual situation, people do things that are a little larger than life, so it translates. But you see all sorts of graphic novels with people who are very, in human scale. So it's just up to you what your tastes are. Remember, this is your world. You can do it the way you'd like.
That's a good point. The example I showed earlier of Jaime Hernndez, these are just people you'd see on the corner in Oxnard. Young vatos and young cholas with plucked eyebrows hanging out while the lowriders go by. Then again, you can look at superhero comics. And even within superheroes, there's a variation. Captain America is a big buff dude, whereas Spider-Man's a little schnooky teenager. And so we wanted in our story to have variations in body types, in personality types too, not to mention ethnic differences, etc. So going from our thumbnail page, where again, you're allowed to make a lot of mistakes, a next step a lot of comic artists do is draw it in blue pencil. Why do we do blue pencil? Blue pencil doesn't reproduce in copier machines or photostat machines or scanners. So you draw in blue pencil and then you're going to draw over that. And again, you're allowed, you sort of know what your panels might look like, but you're allowed to make mistakes. And this blue pencil stage allows you to do that. You can see here, each page needs an establishing shot to show us where we are. In this case, it'll be in our upper left corner. each page by itself needs to advance the action. You can't just be marking time. You won't, in an individual flimsy comic, you've only got 22 pages. In our graphic novel, they come in at 100 pages a piece, but there's no fat. There's no time to just hang out. The story has to keep moving. The most important panel is the last panel on your lower right. That's the panel that's going to want to direct your eye to the next page, whether it's turning the page or up to the facing page. The last panel is the most important. And I stress twice, you need to leave room for the words. This was the biggest rookie mistake I made. Learning how to draw comics was, here Erika and I were writing interesting stuff, but I was trying to make such pretty pictures and fill up the frame. I didn't leave room for the words. So comics are a visual, but they're also a word-based medium, and they have to work together. So leave room for the words.
Quayne Williams said he actually started before thumbnails, lay out the panel boundaries or text descriptions of what he wants. And he has his partner, I guess, creative partner, Amber, draw the thumbnails to make sure they agree on the content.
Right.
It's an interesting thing because we're actually doing this, Quayne, differently because we work together in a very unorthodox way. That's probably usually how it's sort of decided, that the writer will write the panel, and then the artist will draw to that panel, and they can have that collaboration beforehand. But it was often that Tony would draw a panel and then the writing would go in reverse, maybe because we did not know what we were doing, but it just goes to show you can get a good result anyway. It's just that maybe we didn't know what we didn't know, but we learned.
That's true. That's true. And our working method, there's a whole thing in comics, and you can read about all this. I want to stress this. All these resources to learn about how to do this are online. You can read fascinating stories about what they used to call the Marvel method. And that was always distinct from the DC method of comics, Superman, Batman, etc., where there'd first be a script, and then the panel breakdowns, and then the drawing, and then the word balloons, etc. The Marvel method was different. Stan Lee and Jack Kirby would have a story conference. They just say, well, the next story has to have Galactus coming down with the Silver Surfer to destroy the Earth. And then Jack Kirby would go off and draw 22 pages and paste that story out himself. And then only later would dialogue balloons be put in. And Jack Kirby and Stan Lee had to trust each other that they were leaving room for one another to do their thing. And that was called the Marvel method. And you can read about this online. And everybody will work differently. Some artists prefer a full script. Some artists don't. Some writers prefer the latitude of doing the script first. Other writers like that Marvel method. There's no one best way to make a comic. There's your way.
Yeah, I was working with Joss Whedon, by the way. We would write the course, and then it would go, yeah, that was fun. And it would go to an artist who would then write the draw from that story. And that was a different method, and I had to learn it. And it was you have to respect these mediums because it takes a little time to sort of understand it. But again, that's how you grow as an artist.
It's true. So as I was showing you the transition between the blue pencil stage or the pencil stage and then inking it. Comics have to be inked because we like a good crisp black and white looking page for the best reproduction. So pencil work doesn't reproduce as well. Comics are drawn with black ink on white paper over the pencils. Then you erase the pencils, or you do it digitally, but you like a nice crisp image. Then it's time to go to the coloring stage. And we had to learn how to do all this stuff. And it can be learned. I'm here to tell you. It took me years, but this is part of the advantage about doing the comic yourself. It gave us total control. All the mistakes on the page are our mistakes, but all the good stuff, because I think this page is a good page. All the good stuff is our stuff. And no editor bossed us around, or no label told us how to make this comic. We made it our way. I love sound effects, as you can see. Clack, 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 clack. The guns all cock, and our lead character there in the center, Lucas, about to be killed, and says her goodbyes. But the black ink drawing is a factor. The word balloons are a factor, and color's a factor for how it affects your emotions and how you can direct the eye to the important stuff. In this case, I believe your eye is drawn to that center panel with Luca. These are some examples of some covers and interior splash pages that we did. You know, sometimes here again, this is page 1 of chapter 3 of volume 2 of our comic. And we jump right into some action here. Here's our bad guy with the cigar in his mouth and our good guy, and they're both in the middle of a big punch up with some other bad guys. And I was trying to plunge us right into the action. You know, we showed a couple pages like this. I've skipped over an important step. We learned how to draw this thing. We drew it, wrote it, made some sample pages, and sent them to Dark Horse Comics, an independent publisher in Portland, Oregon. And our stuff had a different sort of look to it. And because it was about people of color in the future, it had a different sort of subject matter. And that intrigued this publisher at Dark Horse. So they agreed to publish our book. And this is what it ended up looking like. Splash pages like this, where these two would-be lovers, Luca and Isaac, 2 of our stars, they have to say goodbye. Isaac's walking off into the desert because a man must do what a man must do.
Eric Bess asks, is there any particular way that you think about what you would include or make explicit, or what you leave out to be inferred in between the frames? That's actually a really great question.
That's a really good question.
Comics are about what you leave out and what you leave in. And it's a very disciplined way that you have to tell a story, because you don't have, I mean, you guess you could go on and on, but might lose your audience depending on what you're showing them. And some comics do take their time on laying out things really quietly, where others hurry along and they have much more dynamic. They're led by other things that they have to do depending on who they're working for or working with. So you can ask.
That's a really good point, Eric. You know, they often ask Miles Davis why there was so much space in between his notes. You know, Miles Davis was not Charlie Parker playing at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Miles Davis couldn't play that fast. He had to develop a different aesthetic. And Miles Davis said, well, you know, I'm not just playing my notes, I'm playing my silences. And what you ask is very important. You look at this panel. Now, these are 2 people who have a strong longing for each other, but their longing can't be expressed. That's a great theme. I love that in movies, when 2 people, they're obviously made for each other, but they can't be together. So I tried to draw this with their hands, even though Isaac is deeper into the picture, the picture space. He's walking away. I tried to use a perspective wherein their 2 hands were almost touching, and that it was trying to imply that longing. And that's part of the thing about choosing your panels with comics. You're trying to choose the panel or the frozen moment in time that captures a strong feeling and makes the audience feel something. This next page is an example. It's a very crowded page, but I tried to leave room for the word balloons and also tried to move the story along. This is a young woman running along. She goes to a forbidden rendezvous with some gang members, and they've been waiting for her. And there's a lot of dialogue that has to go back and forth. Plus, there's the radio is talking over. You can see those balloons with the jagged lines on them. That's a voiceover by the radio commentator. Like in a movie, you know, there's a lot of cinematic storytelling tropes that we use also. We use voiceover, we use sound effects, dialogue, obviously. And so trying to, again, each one of these panels is supposed to capture a strong moment of action or a strong moment of change. This is what our finished graphic novels look like as they were published by Dark Horse. We won some awards for them, and we were very proud of them. And we were very proud that we could represent for an underrepresented subject matter and people in comics, people of color. So our story is the story of 2 folks who were trying to sell a movie, didn't sell. We experienced some racist pushback. It made us so mad that we went off and learned how to work in this other medium, where, as we say, the barriers to entry are significantly lower. You can make your own comics. You can publish them on your own website online. You know, the actual industry of paper comic books may be going away because of this coronavirus. But plenty of my friends who draw comics and who love comics are making their comics available for sale or whatever, or free download online. because graphic storytelling like this will continue to be a vital medium. And as we say, despite all the weird setbacks and despite this coronavirus and everything else, the future of this kind of storytelling is free. So that's our story.
And we also used all sorts of things that you think that we'd have access to. We didn't, because we hadn't worked in this medium. I have to give a lot of props to Tony, who not only set himself onto learning this, but also it gave himself arthritis, clutching a mouse. Because there was no Wacom tablet that we had or any of those things. We would go to Comic Cons and those types of places and learn from people in that creative space and see how they were doing it. And they were very generous. And now we have many friends, including people like Sean Martinborough and John Jennings and all these David Walker, amazing people. What you call it? Green? What's his name?
Oh, Sanford Green.
Sanford Green. Yeah. Kevin McCarthy. There's a lot of wonderful comic book creators out there. And if you get a chance to visit them, people talk about Comic Cons because they think it's just going to be inundated with all this, cosplay, and the studios get to promote their next movie, and it's all fun like that too. But if you go into Artist Alley, you get to meet these artists.
Say that again. Artist Alley. Artist
Alley.
Thank you.
You know where it is.
No, I'm asking you to say it for the audience.
Oh, they know. Artist Alley, and you get a chance to actually meet these people and flip through their books. They actually put their work up, and sometimes they even do a drawing for you for a little fee, and or you can buy their latest comic books and things that they are working on. But you also get to talk to them, and that's, I think, a great place. Here's Best. He's. Do you see the live comments?
No, I can't see them.
So click on live comments.
Wait. Before you go on, just because you mentioned an interesting problem, I don't know if you realize, there will not be any comic book conventions this year. So for all of our, bear with me, for all of our comic creator friends out there, or would-be comic creator friends, who are like, oh damn, I'd love to follow Erika's advice, but there's no Comic Cons to go.
No, but you know what? They're doing virtual comic conventions, so stay tuned to that too.
That's what I was going to say. Thank you. I just did a virtual Comic Con last week, doing it like this, and met a lot of young creators who we were able to interact with and find artists and do all that stuff as if we were at a Comic Con. So that's not a dead idea. In fact, it's just changing. Okay.
So do you think Concrete Park comic books are a potential sales tool to get the movie made? Yes, Eric, that's why we did it. We thought if we could make something that could be its own proof of concept, but also it's proof of life. Whatever you put energy in, sometimes it compels other people to see that this is a going thing. And here, especially in Hollywood, when you're competing against all sorts of different, really fantastic projects and creators, it's hard to tell people what you're going to do. So then if you just do it, then they go, oh, and you also have something to talk about when you get into those spaces, or you get in front of people, or they have a way to discover you.
That's right. You just go like this, and you've got something that the next person doesn't have. You made something, and you're already somebody who crossed the burning sands and went through the ordeal, which already says something about you too, that you made something of value. From, this is 120 pages of blank paper. Now it's 120 pages of Concrete Park, and it's a world of difference, and it really does impress people. So yes, they're a great sales tool.
Thanks, Doug and Anita Vora and Doug Worth. They've all said thank you for the inspiration. And what we'd like to see is your work or whatever you're working on be the next big thing, because a lot of people, especially creators, feel like they work in isolation, and they wonder what impact that they're having or can have. And for those out there who are in those spaces, because we consider ourselves to be those types of people, even though we do have a lot of experience in the film and television space and even some success in it, it always comes back to sitting in the chair and creating the discipline to complete or start things and then complete them. And it can be a huge psychological burden because a lot of people don't think you're doing anything if they don't see anything happening. So you have to resist the temptation and urge to sometimes jump on things that feel a little bit more, just immediate, sort of keep moving along. And for those of you who do that well, then that's a gift, because I've struggled with that my entire life, because I'm an actress and I'm used to a lot of collaborations. When I show up on set, there's been people there for years probably making that space so I could come in and then perform. And then you walk away and they're all gone again, and you say goodbye and hope for a next adventure. But the psychological burden of being an artist is the other thing that we should talk about, because when you're drawing comics, you're also bringing yourself to the work, and it's all often infuses that. So you should be conscious that all of us, I should say most of us, struggle in that space.
It's true. I've got a weakness, like my kryptonite or my Achilles heel is I spend too much time on Facebook, and I'm there frittering my energy away, when what I should be doing is doing what's in front of me, putting my head down and drawing. But drawing and writing comics can be very lonely and boring. And you asked me and Erika, it took years to make this comic. There was no substitute for the hard work. But I also see myself and my friends now, especially now that we're all under lockdown already, we're all a little squirrely and having cabin fever. And you just want to get on Facebook and cry and share some stupid joke you just saw, because anything but do the work, But this is also a time I'm discovering as a writer and artist. It's a good time to do some good work, to just shut the hell up and do your work. So I'd like to encourage anybody it seems daunting. Gee, I could never make a comic book. This is a great time to shut up and make mistakes. I'll tell you another secret. Here's my big secret. I was just talking about this at this last Comic-Con. Tracing paper. I would draw something and it would look shitty because I was learning how to draw. And I'd draw something, but I would put a piece of tracing paper over it and draw it again, and draw it again, and trace it again until it got better. And there was no substitute for that either. And I would have particularly like a panel that was a must-have panel with the pretty girl, except she didn't look so pretty. She looked stupid. And I was like, God, Tony, you suck. You can't draw a pretty girl. But I'd put a piece of tracing paper over it and draw it again and draw it again. And what do you know? She got a little better looking. And that's the whole story of drawing this thing. I had a little light box. You can get a cheap light box for $100 online, and put your drawing paper right down over your tracing paper and draw and ink over the light box. And that's one of the secrets we did. We just kept working on it until it got better.
Doug asked, we wanted to create, or says, you didn't want to create a graphic novel to accompany the film. I guess the film he's making. We've taken first steps. It's helped tremendously. That's good. You might find that this graphic novel may be bigger than any one film that you could ever make, because it also is a resource to other storylines that once you, of course, do these things, sometimes we're looking at the ancillary, but the thing itself becomes the thing that the way that it needs to be told. Also, inside of this space, especially now because of the circumstances, and because, again, just going back to normal circumstances of how artists work, it really is a fantastic way to share an idea and people to immediately see what you're doing. But we talked a lot about the visual. We need to talk a lot about story,
right?
A little bit more about story and how you tell that story, because if you don't grab them and it's not consistent and it doesn't move the reader, then it'll be dead on arrival. And people often don't know why they're not succeeding, but they haven't spent enough time on the story, and it's important.
That's true. You're not just here to present your characters. You're here to move the people. You're here to make them turn the pages. I just read a book last night. I read the whole book. I stayed up all night reading this new book by Michael Connelly, the guy who created Bosch. If you haven't seen Bosch on Amazon, Erika's in it. And it's a series of detective novels by Michael Connelly. who was a crime writer from here in LA, but he's kept on with this Bosch series, and his latest Bosch book was such a page turner. I had to finish it last night to see how the story came out. And it wasn't even an exciting story. It was just a good story. It just got me. And there was no.
How is a good story not exciting?
Well, this is what I mean. Okay, it was exciting, but what I mean is this. Bosch is an older dude now. As written on the page, he's in his late 60s. And on the TV show, they have a younger actor playing him. But so he's not running around on rooftops, shooting people, driving fast cars. There's none of that. It's just a simple detective story. He looks into the clues. Some of the people lie to him. He has to see through their lives, all that stuff. And it's just a fascinating piece of writing. It was very, but it moved me. And this is our job, is to make you care, make the reader care about what they're on. You're not there to make muscles or big explosions or the biggest gun. I see so many young people starting out with graphic novels, and they're like, oh, I gotta have the biggest gun. I gotta have the biggest muscles on the dude. I gotta have women with the skimpiest bikinis. And then none of that matters. I'll tell you something. My best example of a comic that moved people, even though it was ugly, when it first came out, was The Walking Dead. I think you've all heard of The Walking Dead. It started as a graphic novel. It wasn't even in color. It was in black and white, and nothing against this poor artist. They got the fellow's name is Kirkman, Robert Kirkman, who wrote it. He got some artist from I don't know where, and it was ugly as hell, and it was in black and white. But that story of it's so basic, humans and the zombies are coming to get you and eat your brains. It made you turn the pages. And that's why that story is successful on TV as well. Each week you care about those characters. It had nothing to do with how big the muscles were or how, it was nothing like that. It was good storytelling. So Erika's right to prioritize storytelling.
I just want to say also Walter Mosley has carried a detective on through years with his
Easy Rollins.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, Easy Rollins. So, and also you could get inspiration from people and places that you wouldn't normally be drawn to. So you should go in those places. I always tell artists that you shouldn't keep haunting around the same neighborhoods. You should move away from that because your ability to see the world, or at least to translate it and even put it on the page, is because you absorbed and you've actually lived. But if you just keep doing the same things, sometimes you don't even have a way to see how your world is within a larger world. So sometimes if you want to know more about your own world or neighborhood or block, you go away from it. So then you come back and you see it with new eyes. And that's important to make sure that you have a lot of good experiences. And then I think it's a must for layering the foundation and the rock that you build whatever story that you're telling or that you tell.
No, your brain, you got to feed your brain the good food. And that involves traveling. We can't travel now. So what do? You got to get books. You got to go online. You got to try and feed your head with new experiences. I'm painting some new paintings. And I always used to try to avoid looking at other people.
Move this way so they can see it a little bit. There you go. Did you go it the whole time? There you go.
I'm painting some new paintings, but there was something in me that was very vain about, well, I don't want to look at other painters. And now that I'm seeing that there's certain problems I'm never going to solve, certain things I can't figure out unless I go see how other people did it and feed my head with some good painting. And then I'll be able to do the work that's in front of me. So you can't work in a vacuum. Erika's right. You must get away from home, if only to be able to see your home.
Let's do some little things. It's called drawing. What types of do you work on a Wacom now? You've used ink and you've talked about the box. Let's just talk about some things that they can get, or even books about writing that you suggest that they get or draw.
Two books I'd recommend. Number one, on writing. There's literally a book called On Writing by Stephen King, and all writers I know agree that Stephen King, when we'd all agree just as people in the marketplace, Stephen King obviously knows whereof he speaks, right? He was one of the world's biggest selling authors. He's done 30, 40 books. The man knows something about writing. So his book is called Stephen King On Writing, Memoirs of the Writing Life. Everybody should get that who's trying to write stories. That's number one. Number two, when you're trying to draw comics, there's a very good, simple book called How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. by Stan Lee and an artist named John Buscema, who used to draw Fantastic Four and Thor and everything during the golden age, or the silver age, of Marvel Comics in the 60s and 70s. And it really is like the Bible of how to break down a story, how to make your panels look different and interesting so they're not all just talking heads and all that stuff. I learned everything from this book, How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. Those are two good resources. And both those books are cheap, too. They're very affordable. You get them on Amazon right now.
Yep. And also, I like How to Write a Movie in 21 Days. Believe it or not, I have applied Linda Seeger's template to almost everything. It seems to work for me. So you have to find the template you want to use. What I'd like to say is difficult or a little challenging is if you have too many types of things you're trying to apply because people think differently. So you can confuse yourself. I think you should try to find one that works for you and then apply it. And then, of course, read others, be inspired. But sometimes people think differently about how to set up story. There's people who think that there's a certain amount of sequence, depending on it, whether it's a film or a television show. But in comic books, there are a lot of different ways that people are thinking about it that somehow are a little bit of outside how I think about story. So I apply a lot of sometimes my filmmaking background or storytelling to whatever I do, whether it's comics or if I was thinking about a novel, I probably still think about it in film terms because I've read hundreds of scripts and I've digested them and I've had to perform them. So I know them. I just try to apply those lessons. But I do respect the medium that I'm working in. You have to know how that works. You can't just shove everything on it. There's a certain way that things need to go. And by the way, you can do mashups too and try to innovate. So I don't want to stop somebody who says, well, I'm just going to do it this way. Hey, you might, be the person who, changes that thing. And we need to think about multimedia and how we have podcasts and we have audio, the drawing and also the script itself are now emerging into all sorts of different ways that people are telling compelling stories. So the mashup is cool.
Erika, do you see this question from Ronnie Braithwaite? Racial pushback and challenges when introducing the idea of concrete park in the intro. Have we faced similar challenges in the comics space when talking to distribution execs as a white passing African-American storyteller? And if so, how are you overcoming this racial pushback? Well, I don't consider myself a white passing African-American. What?
But you are, because people don't know you when they see you unless you tell them you're Black. But but Ronnie, you should know that yes, we have, because if you come in looking a certain way, they're looking at what you're selling. And if you're selling things with Black and brown people in them, they're judging that piece at that point. And they'll bring their biases and their racialization or how they racialize things to bear on your project. So I could be coming in probably a white face and maybe be met with a different reaction if I certainly show them a story about a Black woman, middle-aged in the middle of the country. I might get a better reception if they did it. I don't know. I'm not white. I can't tell you. Tony, you'll speak to it, and then we've got to say goodbye.
Briefly, I found the world of comics to be more open. I'm not saying completely open,
yes,
but more open to racial difference, to gender difference, to sexual identity, fluidity difference than the world of movies or TV where we are, where the default lead is still a white lead for selling movies all over the world. That's not the case with comic books. I'm not saying it's perfect, but we encountered a lot of open minds in comics, and I love that. Any resources for animation somebody wants to know real quick? Last couple of seconds. I have nothing for you. I would say look online.
Look online, and there's a lot of really great. Shauna Mills has been working inside of animation, and there's people who work inside of, that's again, a different space, even though it's similar. So we wouldn't want to give you the wrong information. And also so you know what? Thank you, Grit and Gut, Maurice, V. Lynn, Fran, Eric, everyone, Doug, Anita, and also Seed&Spark. Thank you so much for hosting us. Bria, Despina, thank you for having us. And come again, check out Concrete Park. Like us on Facebook and also on Instagram. And please keep up with what we're doing. We appreciate your support. We are creators ourselves and work very hard, and we'll work very hard to keep you entertained. And we thank you so much.
Thank you. Now I don't know what we do now. Okay.